Hello, and welcome to another City Skylines 2 video, this time part 11 of Povop. Now today we are having quite a big issue, which is a budget imbalance, and every month we're losing $95,000, which is a fair amount of money, so we do need to figure out how to close that gap. And I think the best way to do that would be by adding a couple more houses over here. And as we can see, this did solve our problem, whether it was just because the budget flipped on its own, or because we made a change. Something else I'd like to do is, just because there are so many cars parked here, is make a change to this road. Now I do have another idea for where we could develop. Seeing as these suburbs went well, I think it would be a cool challenge to over here develop a city, just based off of a train line and with no road connections. So what we'll have to do is buy a tile connected to the train line. And now what we need to do is research trains. We're going to need to take out quite a bit of a loan to afford all of this though. Right now though, it seems like we are at a pretty major loss of money. So what I'm actually going to do is lower taxes. Also, it's increasingly seeming like we need to build another hospital or medical clinic, just because of how many people are left out on healthcare coverage. And something I've been wanting to do for a while, just because of how much bike infrastructure we have in place, especially over here, I want to encourage biking. Now that we have another hospital and they're more spread out, I do think what would make sense is to actually cut the service budget. Which I know does sound counterproductive, just because it would reduce its efficiency, but I think the biggest issue has been ambulances actually getting where they need to go. Mainly because of distance, because if the hospital's over here and they need to go over here, especially with traffic and not ideal roads, that's quite a distance to go and a lot of time wasted. And just so we don't get into the red, I do think I'll build a couple of homes over here too. Additionally, something else I'm realizing is we can cut the transportation service budget. Just because we have a bus depot over here and a bus depot over here, we will still have plenty of buses. Additionally, we are gonna have to make quite a few cuts to roads, definitely to garbage because we have extra capacity, to education and research, and to the police budget. Parks and recreation can also be lowered, and communications too. And we'll probably keep the budgets like that until we have a significant amount of money and much less debt. And with much more money and demand, I'd like to continue developing over here. I wasn't able to get this track to turn right, but that should be fine. What we have to do now is decide which actual train station to use. And I think the one that makes the most sense is the historic train station, just because it can be upgraded with quite a few useful upgrades. And that is the actual station set up. Now what I would like to do is add the rear exit, as it increases comfort and also makes it a little better. And now I think it's time to buy this tile too. Except we don't have enough money. A small loan should fix that. And there we go. And we've also got a power problem, which can be fixed with a windmill over here. And now what I'll do is create the train lines. I'm gonna lower the ticket price and assign the minimum vehicles. And for one of them, I'll change their color. And now it's time to build some homes over here. While these build, we are going to have to turn on our railway depot and turn on our train station so that people can start coming into the city. In the meantime, I'll add a couple of trees behind here. And with the first houses added, we can see that they are already filling up, even the high density home too. Now, although this isn't going to do a thing right now, I am just going to put a mailbox here so that they do not complain. The biggest complaints right now are lack of entertainment, unreliable healthcare coverage, small homes, unreliable internet, and high taxes. The easiest one to solve would be the lack of entertainment. Simply adding a park right there should solve that problem. And now, we can see that they have an abundance of entertainment. High crime risk is another big issue, but right now we can't quite afford a police station, but this is a necessity, so we will take out a small home. And I think we should build it pretty central. And over time, as patrolling happens, there should be no more crime risk. As for internet coverage, we can either build a radio mast or a Japanese radio mast. And the Japanese radio mast is better, so that is probably what we should go with, but the only problem is we don't really have a ton of space. But if we place it right here, it should be fine. And now they have reliable internet coverage. But now there's another problem. This windmill isn't able to support the area. So again, we will have to wait a little bit to unlock the advanced rotor system. And with that added, the wind turbine can now support the area again. And now the people are content. The next thing we need to do is solve healthcare. And after waiting a while to get more money, we can finally build our medical clinic. And now the people should go from content to happy pretty soon. Nonetheless, it's time to build a couple more houses. Once again, we're having an electricity problem. But I am going to leave it alone because all it's doing is reducing the efficiency of our water pumping station, and this is capacity we actually do not need. Now that there's quite a few people living in this area, I think it's time to build some commercial. And now we really are having an electricity problem, so we're going to have to build another wind turbine. And there is plenty of demand, so I will continue zoning. And with a whole nother block zoned in, more commercial can be put along here. And checking back on the main part of the city, it is doing pretty well. Of course, there are still the regular problems of noise pollution over here, like always. What I'm seeing more of is that there are not enough customers, but that seems to only be consistent in lodging companies. What I would like to do though is just create a zone over here. And now that we have this district, I do think we should check over here. As we can see, this new district is somehow rated higher than our other district, even with a much smaller population, and apparently about the same area. Population density is much lower though, but it's only got half or a third of the GDP of our other small area. But its GDP per person is much higher, but per kilometer is much lower. Income is also looking pretty good for having many less people, and tax is still really low for how much we're pumping into the services. Something else I'm seeing is that there are no students, which reminds me, we do have to build some schools. So for the elementary school, we are going to go with the Chinese Ruby Rock Elementary School, as it has a high student capacity, low upkeep, and low initial cost. Of course, we're also going to assign it to the district, along with our other services. And hopefully we will see students enrolling, but in the surrounding area we can continue to build homes. While waiting around for buildings to zone in, I saw this message. The city took out a loan earlier, and we're making profit again, so why isn't it being paid back? And honestly, I think that's a good question, as we have a little bit of money in the bank, so we'll pay a little bit of it back. What we'll do now, though, is expand the grid. And just to support the growing city, we are going to upgrade the windmill. And now we'll start zoning in some homes. And once again, we are seeing a power problem, so I'm going to once again upgrade the windmill with a solar assist. And seeing as it made a pretty large difference, I'm going to do the same to the other one. And once again, we'll continue zoning in more buildings. And we have finally unlocked Milestone 10, which will allow us to build our high-density offices. And it seems that we've also gotten this signature building, which is pretty cool. Now what we'll do is go through and add offices. And I do think the first one I would like to try is the US Northeastern office. Now another change I would like to make to this area is shrinking this road, and I have mentioned it before. And there we go. I think that's much better. And also I really do like these Northeastern high-density offices, as I think they look pretty nice. I will have to try to remember not to put them too close together, or something like this will happen. And honestly, I'm gonna make the change now just because it does look pretty odd. And also I feel like I've never seen this design for an office before, but I think it looks pretty cool. And really all of the Northeastern offices look pretty nice. I'm also going to change this road because the only zoning on over here is going to be on this road. So I do want it to look a little nicer. Just because we are building so many offices, I do want to make sure our colleges are ready to accept more students. And honestly, I think we're at the point where it would make sense to start building a university. Also, for some reason, I just have so much more money, I really am not sure where it came from, but I am going to pay back a lot of our loan with it. Not that we'll be able to build it now because we don't have a ton of money, but I do want to look where we could possibly build our university. And I think the best option to build will be the Netherlands University, just because it is quite small and has a high student capacity. Also, compared to the other options, it is much more affordable. And honestly, just because of its price, I think this is something we can build now. And as we can see, the church has filled up, and it can no longer accept any more bodies. So I do think we will actually move this all the way over here. From here we can upgrade it, assign it the district over here, and what we're left with over here is a bunch of freed up space, which once we again take out a little more of a loan, leaves us with the perfect amount of space to build the university. And as we can see, already 185 students have enrolled, and that number is going to keep on going up. And already over 1,000 students are enrolled, and we can expect to see about 1,600. And with our university built and a bigger buffer between revenue, I think it's finally time to increase the education budget again, along with other important services such as parks, communications, and seen as we still have more money, a larger bump to the education and research. And also over here I'm seeing garbage problems start, so it's time to increase the garbage budget. And seeing as we're over here anyways, it's time to finish this intersection over here. A little bit more space will be needed to do this stuff. And there we go. Our intersection is now complete, and it is quite a bit messy, but I think it should be fun. Because right now, no matter where you're coming from or where you're trying to go, you'll be able to get there. And as we can see, this road is already being used for importing materials. As a benefit, while we were working on the highway, we made lots of money, and I think it makes most sense to pay off our loan. And seeing as there's demand all across the board, I would like to continue building over here. With many more buildings added and much more infrastructure for biking and walking added, I think this is overall a very good addition. And as we can see, people are already using these paths. And with just the right amount of space to put a little park, I think it's worth it. And after clicking around for a little bit, I noticed a problem. All of these buildings claim to be leveling up, but that's not actually happening because these buildings are waiting for resources. And because there's no cargo train station or factories, they're not going to be able to get those materials. So I think I'm sure an investment in local industry would help that. But first we have to make sure this train line can actually travel in this direction. And now we can zone in a couple of factories. And as we can see, we're having such a large problem that even our medical clinic is low on supplies, which means our clinic is essentially not going to function at full capacity as it doesn't have medicine. And the new added industry is not helping with our power demands. And also, just to mention quickly, I think we are seeing the first cars. Although I'm not sure where they came from because none of our businesses sell them, I think it's pretty great. Nonetheless, we do have to build another windmill. And luckily this time we had enough money to the point where we did not have to take out a loan. After looking at our factories, we can realize that we have a problem. None of the factories create wood, which means these buildings still cannot level up. Nor do they create pharmaceuticals, meaning that our medical clinics still will not function correctly. Another issue I'm seeing from the industrial area is noise pollution. And the easiest way to solve this is going to be with sound barriers on our highway. I'm not sure why though, but even after time, they still haven't done a thing for noise, which is pretty confusing. Nonetheless, I am going to add a few more trees, and hopefully that will solve the problem. Though no difference was made. And once again, the wind turbines are not able to create enough power. Nonetheless, I think this area is in a pretty good spot, so I think we can leave it to do its own thing, and for now focus on other areas. But there is one last thing I would like to do before we leave this area on its own. One of the biggest complaints is unreliable mail. So what we'll do is take out a loan, and so we can continue to fit the theme of the area, we will build this historic post office. And if we want in the future, we can upgrade it with the city museum, which gives plenty of benefits, including storage capacity, mailbox capacity, more post vans, post trucks, and much attractiveness. And with a couple more mailboxes throughout. And once again we are having a power problem. And I honestly think this is because of low wind speed, which seems to be the only problem here. And it's causing our wind turbines to make much less power. So to solve the problem, we are going to build one last. And if I'm honest, especially because it's starting to get snowy, there is a couple more things this area needs, both of which cost a lot of money. The first thing is the road maintenance depot, and because it will fit in a tile, we will place it here. Additionally, we need the park maintenance depot, which conveniently should fit right here. The electricity problems really are just persisting, so I do think we are going to have to invest in a more permanent solution. Which, as we can see, this area uses lots and lots of electricity. Almost half of what this whole area uses. So in my books, this warrants the development of an actual solution, such as the coal power plant. But for that, we will need money. And there we go, that should be problem solved. But because we are losing money, and we are making lots more electric, it only makes sense to turn off the less efficient wind turbines. And for some reason, even though we should be making enough power in our main area of the city, this part is still importing power. So I would like to see if I could fix that by upgrading these roads with lights. And unfortunately, we cannot bring the roads all the way over here, just because it takes up 3 tiles. 3 tiles we don't have. So our other option is to run pylons all the way over here. And unfortunately, we are still importing power. So I think our next best option is to take a windmill from over there, where they weren't working, and turn it back on. And that should bridge the gap for now. Additionally, we are going to see another problem in the future. The coal power plant is eventually going to run out of coal, which is going to be a major issue for us. So that means we either have to get over here or over here to harvest our own coal, completely switch which kind of power we're making, or our other option is to build a cargo train terminal, which is going to cost us a lot of money. But right now that's our best option, as it will only cost us an extra $100,000 in debt, really $150,000 because we have to buy this tile. And with our 2 cargo lines created, the coal for our power plant should not be a problem. But we are still losing a major amount of money. And additionally, this should solve our problem with our medical clinic. And buildings should finally be able to level up. And to make up for all of these expenses and loans and overall development into the area, it's time to develop a little bit more and then start zoning. Also, I really just cannot deal with the snow anymore. I can hardly see anything and everything just looks so cluttered. And in my books, this looks much better. And luckily, the devs clarified that this does not affect performance or simulation at all. And right now, demand for everything is down. And the main reason for it seems to be unemployment. Not every building is occupied. Now, I am really surprised that unemployment, especially over here, is so high. Just because we have plenty of city services that hire many people. And I am still seeing problems with mail, so I am going to assign this area this specific post office, and hopefully that should fix the problem. Additionally, the actual mail being sent to other places should be fixed with this railway route, as mail can be sent. And as we can see, I think this is our first cargo train coming in, hopefully giving us many of the materials we need to grow the area. And with more demand, I'd like to make more buildings. And an industry we have over here is wood. Something very easy to take advantage of, and hopefully this will create many jobs, and also just create an industry where we can at least have something we're exporting from this area. Again though, we are seeing a budget imbalance, so the easiest budget to cut is going to be education. And by putting it to 90% of its budget, that fixes our problem. And there we go, we once again have zoned in a ton. And this has created 300 or 400 jobs, which should hopefully reduce unemployment. And honestly, I think this whole area is looking very good. We've grown it a ton from absolutely nothing on just a couple of train tracks, and although we have taken out a significant amount of debt to do it, I think it's well worth it, as it's home to almost 4,000 people, and it's created 1,100 jobs. And of course, this will only continue to grow in numbers. And again, if I'm honest, I feel like it's set up better than any other area. It has a cargo train terminal, its own rail depot, and it has a train station too. And in the future, especially once we get more of this debt paid off, we can give it even more services, such as buses, and of course, expand it all the way down over here, as throughout it's relatively flat. Anyways, that's the end of this video. I really appreciate you watching, and if you have any questions or suggestions, please let me know in the comments. In the meantime, have yourself a great day.